screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance wallet is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome, new and old friends, to my introductory episode for Gnostic TV. And hopefully you get to learn a little bit about me and my story, how I became who I am today as the spiritual channel that I am, as the healer and shamanic teacher that I am. A little bit of the story, at least today, comes through. It's the start, really. It's the call to action that I received as a young person, terrifyingly, with demons and all. And ideally, I also will be able to share with you just how bright the light of this world is and encourage you to continue creating that in yourself. However dark things can get, however demonic energies can be, and however much it seems like they can affect us, tear us down, make our lives miserable, there's actually more light available to us than there ever could be darkness. There's higher energies and powers that are waiting to assist us at any moment. And the more we know it, the easier it is for us to connect with us, to carry it in our hearts. And so we're going to do that today. So let's just get right into it. I'm just going to share a few images along the way. They're not so much necessary for you to look at. I don't have pictures of the demonic attack. I don't, have anything like that. But some of these will be interesting, at least for you to look at and think about. And, just against, I am Lindsay Sharman of Rogue Ways and Rogue Soul Services. Rogue Ways is my show that I've been doing for many a year. You can find it on any podcast app in the world. You can also find it on a couple of video platforms. It's been removed from a lot of them. It's a little too spicy for some people. And so you can still find it on Rockfin. And of course, you're going to find it more and more here on Gnostic TV as well. But you can always go to rogueways.org and find everything I do, all of my books, all of my channeled work as I bring through the spiritual ancestors and share their words for you. Everything, the one-on-one services, this is all at rogueways.org. So this is where I would love for you to go. If you would like to connect further, if you want to sign up for the email list, if you want to do a one-on-one healing session or tarot session, if you want to work on past life stuff, any of it is here for you on rogueways.org. And so we'll just start at the beginning. I was definitely born into a family of a little bit of chaos. Very impoverished. At times we didn't always have food. At times we didn't have things we needed. We didn't always have cars. We didn't always have a house to live in. So a lot of chaos there. A lot of love too. Like a lot of people in this situation, it's not like we didn't have good things as well. And in fact, I didn't even really realize we were poor for a long time. So that wasn't that traumatizing to me, actually. I got to just be a little kid and that was beautiful. I actually had a lot of spiritual connection when I was very young, but I didn't know that because that wasn't something that my family was really into or about, or at least if they were, I didn't really hear about it. Every once in a while we would go to church, a Lutheran church, and I liked that because people were nice. We sang songs and there was cookies afterwards. So that was the extent, and it wasn't very frequent. I have some sort of background, right, with that, but not a lot. But I did have almost endless conversations with what I now know would be my spiritual guides and allies, right? And who I now call the spiritual ancestors as well. I didn't know that either. I just thought everyone was having conversations constantly with very intelligent beings who were pointing things out, helping me understand things, showing me what auras meant, and helping me communicate also with plants, animals, and more. And so life was a little bit confusing because I wasn't quite sure why everyone else wasn't on the same page. Wasn't quite sure why everyone else didn't also see the beauty in all that exists and understand that they didn't have to be upset all the time or that there was always going to be a way through. I just had a indefatigable hope instilled in me, and this understanding of a higher connection intrinsically, even though I didn't have words for it. So my early life was a bit like that. A little bit different than having imaginary friends, right? Because I had those too, but I was very aware that I was making them up, right? That was that was different. And then there was this other quality of interaction I could have. And so I spent a lot of time alone. I have a sister that I love. I have a brother that I love. We would run and play and I would have so much fun. But I spent a lot of time alone, more so than either of them, because I was off communicating. I was off getting in touch, right? I was off being deep and centered and all of this. And that made life pretty bearable, even when times got darker and darker, as they did. This is me in middle school. You might be able to see some of the pain in my face. This was after my father died when I was 11. He essentially drank himself to death. There was a lot of trauma around that, obviously. Made me very angry. I went from being this very loving, open, spiritually connected, very hopeful, very positive, uplifting person to hating everyone and everything. Very dark. And during this time, I also, even before he died, had been tortured by a dentist. And I mean very specifically and intentionally tortured. This was a sadistic man who would choose youngest children of single mothers. Even though my father was still alive, he was essentially absent and we had almost no money. So he would specifically choose this targeted group because we were powerless, because he was the only dentist in town who would take payments. And so he was the only dentist in town we could use. And we were in a desperate situation and he knew he had me pinned. And it was a very psychological torture. It was a very physical torture. It was exceptional amounts of pain, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And perhaps more so because no one believed me. No one believed me. And so I learned to just ignore it myself. And there's a lot of healing has been done around these things. You can't really blame people for where they're at, doing the best they can. And so I've let go of a lot of that. But at the time, it felt like I was abandoned. I had there was no hope. And in this crazy dark world, you could be tortured by random psychos and your father could die. And so, the world got very, very dark for a while. Very, very dark. And part of that pain and suffering as well, if you're tortured by a dentist or perhaps anyone in any way, you learn to dissociate. And in a weird way, that became sort of a superpower where I was able to just sort of disconnect from my body and be off in the ether. And so even more so, I could connect with this other plane, this higher plane, and maybe also a little bit of the darker plane as well. Right? There's a give and take here. There's a balance here. But I didn't know any of that really. I just knew what I was running from and how far I was running. And so I did a lot of drugs, just an inordinate amount of drugs from a very early age. I was 12 years old when I started doing really hard drugs and, not just marijuana, but cocaine, crystal meth, LSD, heroin, very rarely, but it was in there in the mix, but lots of the other drugs and just a really extreme situation. I was a really bright girl. I was in the gifted programs prior to my heavy drug use and deep, deep anger and trauma. And then I kind of fell and I didn't lose that intelligence, but I also didn't care at all. I cared enough to just get decently good grades and keep going. I showed up to school and everything, but in the background, off school hours, I was pretty deeply and darkly affected by this extreme drug use. And as happens when you're in your addiction, when you're in your darkness, when you're not in your healing, the people I was around were also pretty bad, pretty much the worst. Some of them were murderers. They've gone to prison since for murder. There was really, really dark people. And I just didn't care because I hated everyone and everything. So I had this background of really deep spiritual connection and then this dark trauma that sort of disconnected me and sent me off into the ether, but also into the darkness. So things were not good. Things were pretty rough indeed. I did have a brief stint here and there of sobriety. I had something in me that was always calling me back to the light, and so I would try really hard. I would go to AA. I would leave my middle school classes to walk down the hill to the local AA meetings at lunch, and, I would try, I would try. And so every once in a while over the years, from about 12 to, 14 or 16, when these very specific dark events and demonic attacks started in my life, I would be sober sometimes. And I would go to AA and I would do AA group meetings for young people and group events. And so one of these events, I think I was about 14 years old. I was in a stint of sobriety and there was a girls' sober sleepover. So pretty cool stuff. And so I went to this, house, and we have a sponsor in AA. And so our sponsor, we all had the same sponsor. She was the youngest female sponsor. So she sponsored all of the teenage drug addicts, basically. And she did tarot. And I didn't have any knowledge of tarot. If anything, I'd seen it in a movie here or there as something weird. And, so I didn't have any really association with it. And everybody was getting a reading from her. That was part of the sleepover event, right? And so I got to see all these people get these readings, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird. I guess they're pretending that they can know the future, that, this messages are coming through from somewhere. And I guess that's kind of cool. I just thought of it as a game. I didn't really have beliefs at this point. It's like I said, when I was young, I didn't really even understand what the connection I had was. I didn't really understand what I was doing or what words I could have applied to the experiences I was having. And then I was just in the trauma, and then I hated everyone and everything. And then I didn't believe in God. How could there be a God if I could get tortured, if my dad could die suddenly? There couldn't be a God. So to me, everything was science. It was materialist. It was very intelligent and very logical. So I was like, well, this is just a silly thing that's happening, right? And yet I wanted to get one too. So I was actually the last person to go. And so I'd seen many people get a reading. I'd seen her reaction as she's doing the reading, laying out the cards and reading them. It was all lighthearted and sort of fun and, maybe a little spooky, but, pretty fun. And then my reading came. And as she started, she was like, oh, this is not good. Like, this is pretty bad, actually. And I was like, oh, that's not good. um, and each card she flipped over got worse and worse. And each card she flipped over, she got more and more uncomfortable. And this was very different from the other 8, girls who had gotten readings. And so I was like, well, what is going on? She's like, I just never, ever in all my years doing tarot had a reading like this. It's crazy, but it has to change. It has to shift. It's just, I've never had every single card be reversed and every single card be a major arcana tarot. And so if you don't know anything about tarot, I didn't at the time. Major arcana cards are pretty powerful, pretty intense, pretty high level energy. They come up much less often in readings. Some readings don't have any at all. Most readings might have 2. And the odds would be about that. In a 10-card reading, you'd have maybe 2 or 3. Every single card. And she got to the 7th card, major arcana reverse. 8th card, major arcana reverse. She's now getting deeply uncomfortable. Like, she's actually scared, which is scaring me because I don't know what's going on. I thought this was just a game. She's flipping over cards. She gets to the 10th card, flips it over. It's major arcana reverse. And she gets up. She's like, I don't know. I don't care. I'm going to get rid of this deck. We're done with this. Like, she lost it. And I was just struck. I was like, am I in trouble? Like, is something wrong with me? I'm going to die? Like, what is happening? And she didn't really have an explanation for me. I just knew how uncomfortable she was and how uncomfortable I was. The night went on, whatever happened, but this stuck in my mind. And I was fascinated now by tarot. Like, what was that? What happened? Why was it so extreme? What is it about me that made this so different? I want to learn more about this. I want to start doing this myself. So I actually got a tarot deck and I started doing readings. And I did them in the exact same way that she did, because that was my only teaching, if anything, I had ever had, right? And it really wasn't that, but by example, I learned, and her method involved calling in a spirit to guide the reading, Don't ever do this at home, by the way. That is absolutely the worst thing you could do is to just willy-nilly invite in a spirit. God protect us. That's what she did, and unbeknownst to me at that moment, she did that and had me do it because she would have each of us do it. I had called in a pretty big one, pretty dark one that was a demon. I didn't know this at the time at all. Like I said, for me, this was just a weird game. It was somewhat interesting. It had fascinated me, but there was nothing really to it. So I didn't know this. I didn't know that that was what had happened. I then went on to do these readings, and it was crazy the clarity with which I just knew what was happening. I would lay a card out and I would just say, "This is this. Here's what it means. Here's what's going on with you." And people, other 14, 15, 16-year-old, other teenagers would be just stunned. How do you know? How do you know these things? And so then I got the reputation. Oh, she's the girl who can do tarot. She'll know things. So people would come to me if they had problems, they had questions, and I would just know, just stunning clarity in my mind. This is what's going on. It's not like I knew the details, right? Like, but I knew exactly the situation. I knew what to say. I knew what was happening. It was perfect. And I got a little bit of pride about that. I'm a really good tarot reader. For some reason, I just know things. I guess maybe it can be real that there's psychic people or people can know things, right? I'm starting to develop this understanding that maybe that's true. And it's fascinating to me and a little bit prideful. At the same time, without me connecting these things at all in my mind, nothing at all led me to connect these for years, at least a year, 2 years. I also started having sleep paralysis. If you don't know what sleep paralysis is when you wake up in the night and your mind is awake, but your body is not. It's a scientifically studied thing. It happens. It really is. Your body cannot move. You're paralyzed, but you're awake. You can hear things. You can understand what's going on in the world because you're fully awake, but you are sort of stuck in your body, for lack of a better phrase, and paralyzed. And for most people who experience it, it's pretty terrifying. It's pretty terrifying to be awake and not able to control your own body, right? Your body gets shut down when you go to sleep so that you don't act out your dreams and flail all over the place, and so that your body can rest. Well, your mind and your psyche and your soul stay active, but it's not so great when that stays on and your mind has come back online. So you may have experienced this or not. There's lots of different theories about what is happening or why. I now know by having lived it for a long time what it is and why it happens. But I didn't understand it at the time. It was just a wildly terrifying thing. This is in the 90s. There's not really internet. I don't have it, at least. I don't have a way to look things up. I wouldn't know what to call it if I did. When I told people about it, no one I knew had ever experienced it. So I was just waking up terrified and falling back asleep. But I, synchronistically, without me understanding how the universe works, but it was taking care of me as best it could through my darkness, through my drug-addled horror, through all of the trauma. I went to a sweat lodge ceremony. I have Native American heritage, and so someone had invited me and my siblings to go do this sweat lodge to reconnect us to some of our heritage we had never really gotten to experience. So we went to do this, and I mentioned this because they said, whatever you have that you want to heal or release or you want help with, let's bring it up and we'll throw it in the fire and we'll get some support for it. And I said, I just have this thing that happens when I wake up and I'm just trapped in my body, and it's terrifying. And they also didn't know what that was and they hadn't heard of it, but they gave me really good advice. They said, when that happens, use a mantra or pray. And I was like, well, I don't believe in God. And they're like, well, then silly me. And they're like, well, then use this mantra, right? And just say, I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm safe, I'm protected, everything's fine. And just do that over and over again. Just say it over and over again. This was my first introduction to mantras. And so I started doing that when it happened, and it was helpful. I was not as scared. I could kind of just rest through it. And eventually you kind of muster up the strength to move like one pinky, and then your whole body sort of starts to wake up. And so this went on for a long time, more and more frequently, but I had less and less fear of it because it became normal. So that was happening. I did not connect this with tarot, with any of the things I was doing otherwise. And at the same time, also disconnected from me, not part of the puzzle at all, I began to experience a poltergeist. Again, I'm very that's not the image I meant to share, but it's a good one. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it, but I didn't know what a poltergeist was. I also didn't have any experience for this. If I had seen anything like the movie Poltergeist, I blocked it out because I hate scary movies and horror, and I, again, definitely didn't think it was real. So when objects began moving, often towards me with some velocity in my house, I just tried to explain it away. I mean, I really literally was like, there is a scientific explanation for this. There is a reason why this pedometer jumped up off the table and flew at me and dropped in front of me. There's a rogue wave of wind or energy that just somehow made that happen. No part of me wondered if it was an intelligent, incorporeal entity. None. So that wasn't related to tarot, that wasn't related to sleep paralysis, it wasn't related to anything, it was just a weird thing, but it kept happening more and more frequently. Turns out, the more time you spend invoking this spirit that you have no idea who or what it is, what it wants, what its intentions are, the more time you spend listening to it tell you exactly the message of every tarot card and every reading that you do, the more time you are invested in this connection, the more powerful that gets. The good news is that's true both ways. Light and dark, light and dark. In this case, not light. But I still didn't know that. So things got to a fever pitch one night, and I had something that sort of shifted my perspective about these poltergeist activities perhaps being not just random, weird, electronic or whatever other, elemental effects of things just sort of happening. And this was when my dog noticed that there was something going on. I was sitting at a computer. He was underneath the desk at my feet. I felt the sensation of something staring at me. I was alone in the house. And it gave me chills. It raised the hairs on the back of my neck. I thought, oh, you're just being crazy. There's what would be here. I kept looking. There's no one here. Okay. Lock all the doors, lock all the windows. Like, I don't know. It's just creepy. Then it got bitter cold. It's like weirdly cold. And I was like, "Brr, like, what is going on?" And then my dog got up from his sleep under the desk and he started coming out and he started staring right at the area behind me where I felt this energy coming from. I felt the staring. I felt the cold. And he started staring at it and I got kind of weirded out. "What are you looking at?" This dog is the most peaceable, loving, best soul in the world. He had never, ever in my life barked or growled or like attacked anything. I mean, loved everyone and everything. God bless him. He, staring at that spot, began to growl. His hackles came up. Over a decade of time spent with this dog, I'd never seen his hackles up. I'd seen people be mean to him. I'd seen someone run their motorcycle almost into him, danger occurring to him. Never, ever. But in this moment, he looked at that spot, hackles up, growling. That was too much for me. I got up and ran into my bedroom. I called him in with me. I shut the door. I hid under the covers. I'm a teenager. I don't know how to deal with these things. There's no one there to talk to. There's no internet to talk to. Nobody so far has understood any of my other experiences. So I'm just terrified and alone. And now I pretty much have to admit to myself that something really weird is going on. And then I start to think about all the things that are moving around. And I start to wonder, what is that? What is it? And why does it feel dark? Why is my dog growling at it? Why does it feel cold? Why does it feel bad? What is it? So now I'm wondering, what is it? What is it? I don't know. I Also, within a few days of that event, I went to bed like a normal person, and I fell asleep like a normal person, and I woke up again to sleep paralysis. And I had done this now hundreds of times, and I went into my mantra, "I'm safe and everything's fine," and then I realized something was very different because I could see, and I could look around me, and I could see the whole room, and I was in what I now know to call the clear light. There's dark light, which is a good thing, it's just dark light, clear light, and white light. There's 3 different places you can be when you're out of body. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know how to be out of body or that there was out of body, but I was also not, right? Because I couldn't move even in the out of body state. I could see everything, I could hear everything. I felt exactly the same as you feel when you're awake, when I feel when I'm awake, but I could see the socks on the floor, I could see, my knickknacks on my shelf, I could see the posters on my wall in a weird sort of light where everything is sort of just lit, but there is no light source coming from anywhere. You may know if you've been out of body. I didn't know. I was just entranced. I was like, what is this? I'm not awake. I can see my body. It's not moving, but I can look around, but my head's not moving. It was so weird. And then I started to feel that same feeling of being watched. I started to feel that same presence of animosity that I had just felt the other night with my dog growling at it. I started to feel that cold. And I realized that thing was coming. Whatever it was that had been throwing things around the house, whatever it was that made my dog so upset, it was coming. I heard my dog scratching at my door of my room, which he had also never done once in our entire lives. And then I saw finally this entity with my spiritual eyes, which I didn't understand at the time, come through my bedroom door. When you're an incorporeal entity, you don't have to pay attention to things like walls, it turns out. And what I saw, for the first time, I had felt it, but now I was seeing, and it was just a black mass, black, roiling, dark energy, torpid, and just moving along. I'd say maybe about human size and roughly shape was just like an oblong mass of darkness, and it just came through the door, and it seemed to look at me. There was no eyes, but it seemed to look at me. It seemed to understand that this time I could see it. And I thought to myself, "Oh, that's what's been throwing things around the house. I'm in danger and I can't move and I'm trapped." So instant severe fear is coming up within me. My dog is whining at the door, which is only adding to my terror. He knows something wrong. I know something's wrong. And this thing is staring at me in my bedroom now, feet from me. And then it does the most interesting thing ever. This is so key if you're a dark, psychotic demon. This was a great move. And it just turned into a little girl. It just sort of like morphed down into the shape and all the details of a little girl with little girl hair, a little girl dress. And it was all outlined in yellow light, like blazing yellow light. And what I did not notice at the time is that it still had that black aura. And if I would have thought, I would have known, I knew at this point that I could see auras. This was another one of my realizations along the path, that everyone was glowing all the time and that the colors meant something. Again, I had no teachers for this. I had nothing except myself to try to decipher, okay, when someone's really mad, it's this color. When someone's really happy, it's this color. When they're talking about this type of thing, it's this color, da 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 da. And I knew black, so rare and so evil. So I would have known, but I did not have enough time to reflect. I didn't have enough time to think. All I knew is, okay, maybe it's a little girl actually. And here is where it got interesting, because I thought, okay, wait, maybe I've misunderstood this whole thing. Maybe it's a ghost. It just feels cold when a ghost is around. We just are freaked out. My dog's upset because it's just weird. But maybe this thing is actually just this little girl ghost, and maybe she needs my help. And here's another little point of pride. See, this thing had spent so much time with me, it knew exactly what would take down my defenses. And children and animals are key. That is exactly what will take down my defenses. I would do almost anything to save almost any animal or child. Just this is part of my nature of being connected to the light, right? Of who I really know who I am. And it knew that too. So becoming the form of a small girl child was perfect because I stopped being afraid. And I thought, oh, do you need my help? Are you just a little girl ghost? Are you stuck? Are you trapped? Can I help you? Can I be like the cool person who gets to help you go to heaven or whatever's afterlife, right? And very clearly, in my head, in my heart, a voice came through, no doubt, no pause, no stutter, and said, that's what it wants you to think. And I knew as soon as I heard that this was the truth. And it heard that too. And it knew that I knew and that the gig was up. And my defenses came right back up. I got scared again, and it turned back into the blob of darkness and it started flying towards me. And this now is all in just a split second. As it's flying towards me, I'm realizing I don't know what happens when that thing hits me. It's probably not good. And I need help. And I don't know what to ask for help. So I default to God. To God, help me. God, help me. And I said it with all of my heart and my mind. And God heard that cry for help. And I felt a rush of energy move around me. And I saw a shimmering sort of barrier of light appear around me and right in front of my face. Even my spiritual eyes could see it. And that thing, it came up this shield right in time and it hit the shield and I felt it hit it. It like kind of pushed me back a little bit. And then I heard with my spiritual ears, not a sound anyone could have heard in physical reality, awake or not. The worst sound I could have imagined ever. I don't think I could have imagined it ever. It was dark. It was horrible. It was like every human screaming in terror and pain at once, while metal was being crunched and crashed, while bombs were going off, while scraping chalkboard, anything bad you could imagine hearing, but all at once and as a scream of fury. And I get it now. This thing had been called in. It found its chance and its opening to come and attach to an otherwise powerful spiritual channel that had nearly been turned off by torture at the hands of a sadistic dentist, but it had nearly been turned off by the death of a father at an early age, that had nearly been turned off by just massive amounts of drug use, and now had been coaxed, right? And groomed into accepting the weight / parasitic relationship / gifts of a demonic attachment. All those years spent creating that attachment for this moment that was perhaps supposed to be like its magnum opus, like it was gonna get me, merge fully, take possession. Who can be sure at this point? Because it didn't happen. Thank God it didn't, because I called on God and God made this shield and it hit that shield and bounced off and it could do nothing about it. And that's why it screamed so furiously, because it was over. It's never really over for them. But that pretty good game had not succeeded. In the meantime, I'm desperately trying to move just a pinky, just anything, just to try and wake up. And, you know, the spiritual vision and sound released and moved away. And I was back in my body. My body could move. And I got up and I ran out of my room. So that clearly it's not safe. And I ran to my mother's room because I'm a teenager, because I'm a child still. And because I don't even know what just happened to me. And I got into her bed with her, and God bless her, she was so tired. She worked nights as a nurse, and she had probably just gotten home or had a night off and was finally able to sleep or whatever it was. She didn't even really notice or care. She just called over and let me sleep with her. But I couldn't rest. How could you? I had this going through my head. What was that? What happened? There's apparently this ghost who wants to attack me now. Is it a little girl? Is it not? What was the voice that said that's just what it wants you to think. What was it, that scream? Is it still here? And not only all of these questions, but now I'm also, anytime I even sort of start to close my eyes and be able to fall asleep, the most gruesome images and scenes were in my mind. And I just assumed I had gone crazy, that none of this was even real, that the drugs had taken my brain, that there was no hope for me. I was deeply terrified, deeply depressed, hopeless. I was pretty sure that my whole life was over. And now I'm just seeing that things that you wouldn't even see in the most horrific horror movie, which could have been a sign if I would have understood, if I could have had any sort of objectivity, which how could I? I could have thought, wait a second, if I couldn't even come up with this scene of torture and horror on my own, then where is it coming from? But I just didn't understand that it was still trying. It was still trying to degrade me. It was still trying to affect me. It was still trying to put me down. So morning came. I would say I woke up, but I don't think I ever slept. I got up. I got ready to go to school because I didn't know what else I would do. What would you do? Who do you call? What do you do? So I went to school, and remember, I'd been heavily into crystal meth, LSD, marijuana to say the least, heavily for years. I'd come to school on everything. I'd come to school after 3-day benders. I had come to school not having slept in 3 days, all sorts of dysfunction and horror. And people were used to seeing me not well, to say the least. And I showed up, and I saw one friend, and they were like, "Hey, Lindsay, oh my God, what happened?" And I was like, What? What do you mean, what happened? And they were like, "Did your dog die?" I was like, "No. Why would you say that?" And they're like, "You just look awful." I was like, man, I've come here without sleep before. One night of not sleeping, like this shouldn't be there, but whatever, this person, who cares? Keep going. The next person sees me. He's like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Do you need help? What's going on?" I'm like, why is everybody seeing this? This energy is still on me or in me, or I don't even know what. And now I'm starting to freak out because everyone else can see it. I can't get away from this. I don't even know what happened. And finally it struck me. I was like, I need someone. And I have the perfect person. My friend's parents actually were Christians. And they had seen me doing tarot before, and they had said, "These are the cards of the devil. You get these off our property. They're not allowed here, or you're not allowed here when you have them." I literally had to walk to the end of the driveway and put them at the end of the driveway in a little bag and pick them up on my way out. So I was like, well, maybe they know. Maybe they know. They believe in demons and weird stuff. Like, maybe they know what's happening to me. Maybe it isn't me going crazy, and it's worth a shot, right? So I called them from the payphone, and I said, "Hey, I really need some help. Can I come over?" And they're like, "Of course." It's just so sweet. So nice of them to do. And so I drove up to their house, and they said, "Wow, you look horrible." Like everyone else. "What happened?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I can tell you my experience, but I have no idea what's going on." And they were like, "Tell us." And I told them, and they're like, "That's a demonic attack. You were just attacked by a demon, and you've probably had it around you. When did you start doing tarot?" And I was like, "I don't know, like a while." And they're like, "Did other weird things happen?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, these things are flying around the house." And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh, and the sleep paralysis." They're like, "Yeah, that's all demonic. You, have been suffering this whole time." And then I sort of realized, they said, "When did you call it? How did you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I guess when I do tarot, I invite in a spirit." And they were like, "No, don't, no, don't do this." So I said, "Well, what do we do about it?" And they said, "Oh, it's actually very easy. We'll call Jesus in." You'll call Jesus into your heart. And I was like, "I don't even really believe in this stuff." And they're like, "It doesn't matter. You're under demonic attack. Like, you should at least try," right? I was like, "Okay, sure. I'll do anything, right? I'll do anything to make this stop." It was just horror. I still have I had the horrible visions in my head still, even during waking hours, like while I'm telling them this. It's all so overwhelming and stressful and horrifying. And so, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. What is it? And they guide me through the prayer, which is anyone can do. anyone's welcome to do it, whether you are a Christian or not, believe in Jesus or not. You could try. This is the highest good, in my opinion, in my long now series of interactions with Jesus. This is one of the most loving beings I get to interact with. At the time, it was my first real interaction. And I just said so simply, "Dear Jesus, please come into my heart." And I felt it, which is not what I expected at all. 0% of me would have expected that anything discernible would have happened just by saying these simple words, but I meant it. I was very much actually inviting Jesus into my heart. And so he came into my heart, and my whole body, head to toe, cleared as though just the light had been poured in instantly and filled every pore. All of my fear was gone. All of my doubt was gone. All of the terrible happenings of the past 24 hours is gone. I didn't even realize all of the past years of weight of dealing with this attachment gone. In an instant, I felt peace like I didn't even know I was missing, and love in my heart. And I started crying. And I said, I just felt that. And I told them, and they were like, praise God, praise God. And I went deeply into Christianity for a while. I got very fundamentalist about it. Because it had saved me and it had stopped me from who knows what. And since I've opened up a lot more, and I'm definitely not, I feel like I'm a Christian because Jesus lives in my heart, and I aim to be Christ-like, which is what the word Christian actually means. But I've also been called to my native roots, and I have a lot of shamanic experiences, and I interact with lots of beings, and a lot of Christians would have a lot of issues with what I do. But it was perfect. It was beautiful. It was exactly as it should be. And this was my first and best ally of the light, of the spiritual ancestors. And I loved it. I was so grateful for that. And they were like, well, you're not done yet. Because you have to close the portal, so to speak, and you have to really get this energy out of wherever it's been most prevalent. It sounds like at your house, you've had these poltergeist-like experiences. So you need to clear your house of this energy and really release that so that it can't come back in, or at least not easily. Little did they know, this is very much like a magical ritual, right? So that would horrify them to hear, but this is very much a magical ritual. And they explained to me how to go home, cast out the demonic energy by invoking Jesus's name and saying, get out of my house in the name of Jesus, and then call in the light of God and of Jesus to fill that house and that space. This is very much in alignment with any kind of clearing and any kind of tradition where you cast out the negative and you bring in the good. So they were actually instructing me in my first magic ritual. And so I went in back to my house, very scared to do so. I was alone again. No one was there. Found my tarot cards. I cast all of the energy out. I called in all of the light. It felt different. I felt it. I feel like my dog felt it and just knew that this was lighter, this was brighter, things were better, things were going to get better from here on out. And I went outside to burn the cards, to get rid of them entirely so that they did not even exist. No one else would have to stumble upon them and have this attachment or whatever. So I went out to the fire pit. We have this little fire pit out in the yard, and it's just nice under the trees and whatnot. And I brought my lighter because I smoked lots of cigarettes and drugs. And so I had a lighter all the time. And I went out and I put them down, and they're paper little cards, right? And as I was getting out there, it was just getting kind of stormy. It was a bright day before that. It was nice out. It was beautiful. And it's getting kind of windy. The wind's picking up. It might rain. I'm like noticing this. Okay, it's kind of hard to light. Oh, it's not lighting. These aren't catching. The wind keeps blowing it out. So I was like, oh man, this is okay. I'll go get the lighter fluid. I get the lighter fluid, spraying it. I'm trying to light it. It's not. And then all of a sudden I'm just like, things are like falling. I'm like, man, this wind is crazy. Like what? This is pine cones and branches. Like I have to get this done, and then I look, and I just see right in the yard next to me, nothing. There's no wind. The trees aren't moving at all. I look at the wind above me. Trees are crazy, like they're trying to attack door neighbor. Nothing. I almost lost my nerve again because I was like, this is the demon trying to stop me from closing this portal. whew, right? Like, no one's here to help me through this. I just have to do this. Now I'm getting like hit in the head. I just have to like try more lighter fluid, more lighter fluid. Lighter won't light, won't light, won't light. Finally, it lights as I'm praying to God that He helped me do this. And He did. And I lit them and they burned all the way. And I made sure every single bit of them was ashes. And that storm just stopped. And there was nothing. And the whole grounds now were cleared of this attachment. It's the power of God. It's the power of Jesus. It's the power of asking for help from the light. Just like you can invite in a spirit of darkness, you can invite in a spirit of light. And you are the powerful person who gets to decide who you're going to call in as your allies and which energies you're going to align with. And this was my first very powerful knowing of that truth. And it was like I was waking up from a bad dream. I just realized how long I had been under this oppression, and I realized how dark it had gotten, and I realized how many things I just was, oh, it's just, the wind blew this thing off the table, even though that's literally not possible. Oh, my dog's just growling. Oh, it's just sleep paralysis. It's just this, it's just this. And we all have this potential, right? To just feel like, oh, well, oh, well, oh, well, it'll be whatever. It's fine. No, it's not fine. And I woke up to this bright, beautiful light from this dark, shattered place. And I was nowhere near healing my trauma. So I was like nowhere near the end of my journey, but I was definitely at the beginning of it. And this is really my initial call to the path of becoming a healer and a teacher, which is what I am today. And now after all these years, I have gone deep into the healing of my traumas, not just of this life, but of past lives. I've learned from many shamanic teachers over the years, many teachers of many traditions, Buddhist, Taoist, mystery schools, and Gnostics, all of them. And all of them come together in one in my offering to people, in my healing work, in my books that I channel through, and in my work connecting with my own spiritual channel with the higher energies. All of those traditions help inform me, but really what it comes down to is what I've been guided to know and understand by my spiritual guides and allies, Jesus being one of them. So perhaps in a future episode, I will also share being taken to the center of the universe by Jesus and some other guides, and further demonic attacks and experiences. And I hope that you'll come join me for those introductions to my further path. In the meantime, I would love for you to go to rogueways.org, check out the soul services I offer. I do tarot now. I just invite the light, Jesus, God, and others that are good, true, and beautiful in, your guides and allies in, and that's part of that too. So I do tarot now. I do it the right way and the good way. And I also do channeled messages. So if you'd like to read about earth changes or the coming shifts in humanity from the perspective of our ascended master friends, then you can read those at rogueways.substack.com. And I do every other Tuesday, the first and third Tuesday of the month, a lightning oracle round, I call it. So if you want a very specific message from your spiritual guides and allies who are good, true, and beautiful to assist you on your path, if you have a question you would like the answer to, then you can come to that as well. And that's also on my 101 services page. It is, however, a group service. So there's a group event. Everybody gets to come together and receive their messages. And that's at calendly.com/rogueways, along with all of my other services. So check out those places, get on the email list, and stay tuned for more. And thank you for being here and for being you. I know that we all have had darkness in our lives in various ways. And, it's sort of like pain. I've had a lot of chronic pain in my life too. I have a lot of pretty severe physical health issues, also since I was very young, as well as being tortured by a dentist. So I know really deep pain. And, some people say, oh, I have some pain, but not like yours. Right. And so you might be being like, man, I thought I had some darkness, but maybe not like that. It's not a game. It's not about who has worse or better or anything really. It's about it's yours. It's your pain, it's your darkness, and so it matters, right? And so I'm here to help you with that. And hopefully we will continue to explore that together for many a year to come. You know all of the ways to keep in touch, and otherwise I will see you next time. Travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Yeah, come on, Rap Kings, baby. It's the rap machine. Yeah, check it. Gray bearded pirate, my motherfucker unknown. Yeah, come on. In the place with my fist up, meaning I resist the bullshit that they feed us and lead us. This is just a part of the process, man. Just watch this, cause this shit's about to get crazy like a mosh pit. We lost it, toss it, let's start it again. Cause now with technology, with smarter men and women, this is the beginning, not the end. And this is the message of hope that I send. Look on your TV, it's a culture of death. They'll keep on lying to the very last breath. We keep on striving and spreading the truth. It's hard to survive in this world for the youth. The door is closed, the old world is dead. Let's have an age of understanding instead. I'll include you and you include me. Let's see what we can build with some positivity. Let's go, you're moving too slow. Let me see your hands if you know what I know. Come on.
Rap like mummy, ain't no dummy in my rhyming. Started flowing freestyling, now they rhyming loud silence. On with the violence, bodies piling with the gray bearded pirate. On your TV in 4K 3D virtual reality. Casualty of urban warfare. I know but I'm not scared, just prepared and aware. Shining my light through the tunnel of hope. Into the rope, but I'ma give it one more pull. Till the family is full. Take the bull by the horns and lead it to the slaughter. That would be harder and you would be softer. Sometimes I'm a monster, and you forever imposter, with your champagne and lobster. This royalty, the way it was supposed to be. Hopefully the new door opens and the old one closes, with way more focus and growth to mold us, and the truth that they should have told us.
To them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet. Everyone got a gift, everyone got a light. They want you to forget that ish, cause they can't dim the bright. The positive vibration takes you past the sign shackles, from the sewers and the alleys in the moving castles. Who these assholes really serving with an exposed Achilles surgeon around the corner lurking to prove ascension trumps perversion? Learn them to catch fish and unplug the signal. Show them the simpletons now build the fucking temples.